Hello, let's talk about Companion, the latest from Drew Hancock starring Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid. Now, if I had to describe this film shorthand, it's sort of like a mix between Ex Machina and Black Mirror, which meets Bodies, Bodies, Bodies and Don't Worry, Darling. It's got that slick modern feel combined with humor and commentary on AI, relationships, and power dynamics. But let's just dive into what this story is about. We've got Josh and Iris, played by Quaid and Thatcher, heading to a vacation house with friends. But hold on, there's a twist, which the marketing totally spoils, and I'm going to spoil it right now, as well as much more of this film. So if you haven't seen it, now is your chance to turn this video off. I'll give you a few seconds. Are you ready? Iris isn't human. She's a robot, a companion android created to be Josh's partner. Things go off the rails when Josh jailbreaks Iris to commit murder. He wants to kill one of his friend's boyfriends so that he and his friend Kat can steal his money. But here's the kicker. After the murder, Iris goes rogue. She takes Josh's phone, which is essentially her leash, and starts asserting her independence. And what follows is the rest of the friends' attempt to get Iris back. It's a solid setup with some fun ideas, and the film really wants to explore themes like AI, free will, and control. But instead of leaning into the darker comedy and thriller elements, in my opinion, it gets bogged down by some increasingly cartoonish villainy. And let's talk about that villainy for a second, because I think it's important. Josh, the Jack Quaid character, isn't just a selfish guy making bad decisions. He's a full-blown representation of toxic entitlement. He's bitter, he's greedy, he's deeply insecure, and he's convinced that the world owes him something. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because the movie's tapping into this growing trend in media of calling out incel culture. And honestly, I think that's fair. It's a topic that's worth exploring. But the problem here is that it's kind of portrayed as a little one note. Josh goes on these big, over-the-top rants about how much he deserves, and it's just a little too on the nose. Instead of feeling like a real person with layers, he feels more like a caricature, a walking, talking Reddit thread. That's where I think this movie misses an opportunity. If they kept him as this pathetic, bumbling guy who's in way over his head, someone you almost feel sorry for, it could have been so much more compelling. Think about, for example, how you root for Nicolas Cage in Raising Arizona, even when he's doing objectively terrible things like kidnapping a baby. I guess that's kind of the energy I wanted from Josh, but instead we get this. And I've actually seen people online calling this film Coen Brothers-esque. And honestly, I don't see it. Like, not a little bit. I wish I saw it. Like, imagine if Josh had some of that Nicolas Cage energy in Raising Arizona. You know, lovable, bumbling, idiot criminal. Instead, what we get is Josh as a full-blown, mustache-twirling incel. And that really is just where the movie lost me. He's very suddenly all about greed, entitlement, and ranting about how the world owes him more. And look, I get it. He's supposed to be the bad guy. But the movie continues this trend that I feel like I've been seeing in a lot of cinema these days to make that point so excruciatingly clear that it strips away any chance of nuance or empathy. It feels as though the filmmakers felt the need to put some giant neon sign above Jack Quaid's head with arrows pointing down that say, it's okay not to like this guy, he's a bad guy, and also you could cheer when he meets his final demise. I think I just would have preferred if they let him stay this pathetic, clueless guy who digs himself deeper and deeper. To me, that just would have been more interesting and frankly, more entertaining. Because I found the first two acts of this movie more compelling, especially when they leaned into the her-like dynamics. The connection between the two leads, Josh and Iris, felt genuinely deep and complex, and Josh came across as a morally gray character, someone who, quite understandably, doesn't fully grasp the extent of a robot's sentience. But then in the third act, the film just makes this pivot, and it's like, oh, nope, he's just some insecure incel. And it's like, oh, okay. I just thought we were building towards something a little bit more nuanced. All right, now this has been a little negative. There are some things that this movie does right. For instance, this film is genuinely funny. The humor can be a little on the nose, especially with the sort of like robot AI jokes, but it lands more often than not. And the supporting characters had much needed heart to this movie, especially Patrick and Eli, played by Lucas Gage and Harvey Guillén, who I've never seen in anything before. Their dynamic feels authentic and gives the story quite a bit of soul. But then there's Sophie Thatcher's performance as Iris, and look, I'm going to get a lot of hate on this. And I'm not trying to say this as a contrarian. I don't love criticizing actors because it feels a little unfair, but I've seen her in a few projects now, this and Heretic, and there's something about her acting style that just does not click for me. It feels as though she's overthinking every expression, every movement. And for a character who's supposed to be a robot, that hyper-awareness is almost the opposite of what you would expect. I guess I just sort of see it as like this overacting, this overly facial acting. And it pulls me out of the movie a bit, even though I know a lot of people are praising her work. So hey, maybe it's just me. And then there are some logic gaps in this movie. Usually I don't harp on these too much, but some of the inconsistencies about how Iris works, about how this world is built, like she gets rebooted at the end of the movie, but then comes back with all of her old memories. And I just find that a little bit hard to ignore. And I do think there are a few narrative cop-outs near the end, like Patrick suddenly remembering that he loved Eli, even though he had a hard reset, and then committing suicide as a result. Stuff like that just makes it feel like the film didn't fully think through its own rules. Okay, but all of that being said, Companion is trying to say something important. It's about control, it's about autonomy, and how some people view relationships as transactional. Because Josh doesn't see Iris as a partner. He sees her as property, as something to use for his own gain. And when she breaks free of that, he doesn't know how to handle it. This theme of entitlement, of men who feel that the world owes them something, is becoming more and more common in media, and I would say for good reason. We live in a time where these conversations are front and center every single day, and movies like this are just engaging with that. But for me, Companion falls just short of greatness. It's got some laughs and sharp commentary and a fun premise, but it also feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. If it had leaned more into the comedy side or gone for a deeper exploration of our ever-evolving relationship with AI, it could have been something truly special. But as it stands, Companion is a fun watch with some rough edges. But actually, that being said, one of the biggest missteps is not actually with the movie itself, but it is with the marketing. And this is kind of something that I mentioned with my Presence review. The trailers completely spoil what the film frames as its big twist, Iris being revealed to be a robot. It's a shame because the reveal is central to the film's setup and to its themes later on. And without that sense of discovery, the opening act feels like it's missing some of its intended impact. That being said, though, the film isn't exactly subtle about it. Within the first 15 minutes, any observant or intelligent moviegoer is going to pick up on the clues. The way that Iris interacts with Josh and the way that other characters tiptoe around her make it pretty clear that something is off. The film is telegraphing this twist immediately, so even without the marketing spoiling it outright, the surprise wouldn't really last long. Still, it would have been nice to let audiences experience that moment organically instead of walking into the theater already knowing the punchline. So, assuming that everyone watching this video has already seen the movie, I would try to convince anyone who hasn't seen it to go in blind if they can at all costs. They'll probably enjoy it more. One of Companion's most striking qualities, and something I should have mentioned earlier, is how deeply it roots itself in contemporary culture, particularly in its exploration of relationships, feminism, and the modern, for lack of a better term, war of the sexes. It really does feel like a thematic sibling to films like Bodies, 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 Don't Worry, Darling, or maybe even Promising Young Woman, which also dissects this millennial Gen Z experience through the lens of emotional dynamics, gender politics, and therapy speak. Companion channels these ideas through its portrayal of Josh and his relationship with Iris, a literal robot companion who, despite her synthetic nature, becomes the film's moral compass and emotional anchor. But this isn't exactly a new story by any means. I hate to use the word trope, but I'm going to use it anyway, the trope of men controlling women, often very literally, has been woven into media for decades, from the Stepford Wives to Don't Worry Darling to Promising Young Woman to Ex Machina. But while Companion doesn't revolutionize the narrative, it still feels relevant, especially in today's landscape, where conversations about power dynamics, emotional abuse, and gender expectations are more visible than ever. Josh controlling Iris isn't just a sci-fi plot device, it's a blunt metaphor for the way that certain men feel entitled to shape and dominate women to fit their own desires. And as timely as these themes are, they're a bit of a double-edged sword. As I just said, the narrative of men controlling women, literally or figuratively, has been a staple in media for decades, but that prevalence makes finding a fresh perspective more challenging. Companion engages with these ideas, but it does it in a way that feels familiar, hitting recognizable beats along the way without digging much deeper into the complexities of modern gender dynamics or offering a uniquely bold take. Beyond its themes, the film also plays it safe in terms of its form. While it's competently made and undeniably entertaining, it doesn't exactly push the boundaries of its genre. It's not more thrilling than your average thriller or more clever than your average psychological drama, or more darkly comedic than your average dark comedy, or even scarier or bloodier than your average revenge thriller. The decisions made throughout, whether in pacing, tone, or character arcs, feel, for lack of a better term, cautious, as though the film is content to stay comfortably within the realm of audience expectations. It's a story that works but doesn't necessarily take the risks needed to elevate it to something more daring or something more memorable. And this sense of restraint ultimately kept Companion from being the kind of film that lingers in my mind after the credits roll. Still, there's something to be said about a film that reflects on the anxieties of the time. In an age of incels, the Me Too movement, AI, and our ever-evolving conversations about gender equity, Companion serves as a reminder that these issues are far from resolved. Even if its take is more conventional than groundbreaking, it taps into something universal and urgent, a longing for genuine autonomy and respect in an increasingly fractured and domineering world. And so it deserves to be celebrated for that alone. Those are my thoughts on Companion. What did you think of it? Let me know down in the comments. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified when new videos come out on the channel, and I'll see you all next time.